see no evidence that Beijing was actively influencing how this matter should be handled. Information that I have, again, suggests that this was purely a local matter that should be handled locally.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the CRN forum. My name is Shuai. I'm the co-president of CRN. For those who may be not familiar with what is CRN, it stands for Chinese Rainbow Network, and we are the largest international Chinese LGBTQ plus community. And you can join us by checking out our Instagram and on our website, there's close to like 60, 70 WeChat groups, so you can choose and join the community. We also established the one and still the only scholarship for Chinese LGBTQ plus across the globe, and the application will be open soon, so stay tuned. And another news I want to announce is every year we participate the Pride Parade in North America, and this year we will join New York, Boston, and Seattle. So the announcement of how to participate will come soon. Okay, let's talk about today's topic, Hong Kong. And I think all Chinese LGBTQ plus group across the globe are looking at Hong Kong now. We all know that Taiwan in 2019 legalized same-sex marriage. It's such a great news for everyone. And now we all hope that Hong Kong is the next. Over the past year, there are some very important developments, but not always the good developments. We know that there is a key proposal didn't move forward, and it left many people wondering what it means and what could be the next step. So today, let's take a step back and have a more grounded conversation about where things actually stands and what might come next. So we are very glad to have co-founder of Hong Kong Marriage Equality, Jerome Yau, with us. Jerome, it's very great to have you here. Want to have a quick greeting to everyone here?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here on this platform. Of course, good evening to all of you who are living in North America. So I'm Jerome, co-founder of Hong Kong Marriage Equality. We were set up in 2019, and our main objective, or the only objective through HKME, is to advance marriage equality or same-sex marriage in Hong Kong. Many of you have known that we saw a defeat last year, but we'll talk a little bit more later on. But I think I would say a good reminder for everyone is from the very, very beginning, we know this is a long journey, and it's even though we encountered a defeat last year, but it wasn't the end. It was just one of the many stops. So we will encounter along this journey. So we will talk a bit more later on.
Thank you for set up this important tone. So everyone take a deep breath. That it will be a long journey. And Jerome, let's learn about the history first. So I know that it's definitely not just the bill is not coming from nowhere. Tell us about what's the history of Hong Kong same-sex marriage movements. When did it started, and maybe before the bill, what's coming? Where does this bill coming from, basically?
Thank you. First of all, the question of same-sex marriage actually first, I would say, appear on news way back to around 2003. At that time, a local activist got married in Canada. But of course, at that time, two provinces in Canada, British Columbia and Ontario, just legalized same-sex marriage in 2003. And anyway, this activist got married in Canada, and there were chatters about, whether they would try to do something in Hong Kong and kickstart the conversation. Nothing really happened in the end. So fast forward to 2023, which 10 years later on, our Court of Final Appeal handed down a ruling in a major case involving the recognition of same-sex marriage. So just to give everybody a little bit of a background, the litigant behind the case, his name is Jimmy. He he got married in New York, if I remember correctly. But anyway, got married in North America. He asked the court, first of all, whether under Hong Kong's law or basic law, whether there is a constitutional right to same-sex marriage, or whether those who got married overseas, whether their marriages should be recognized by local law. So, and eventually the case went all the way to the Court of Final Appeal in Hong Kong. Basically, when it comes to judicial, we call these cases judicial review. When it comes to judicial review cases, it always begins at the court of first instance. And afterwards, either party can appeal to the Court of Appeal, and eventually the last resort would be the Court of Final Appeal. So in September 2023, the CFA Court of Final Appeal handed down a ruling. First of all, the court determined that there is no constitutional right to same-sex marriage, but by a majority, the court ruled that same-sex relationships must be recognized via an alternative framework. The legal reason behind is the right to privacy. Basically, the majority determined that these couples, they do have a right to their private lives, and the lack of recognition would cause immense difficulties for these people to enjoy their private lives. So the court gave the government 2 years to do this work. The court did not dictate as to how the government should recognize same-sex relationships. It said that that it would be best leave it up to the government and the legislature to come up with a framework, and that's the 2 year framework,
Okay.
2 year timeline. So
It
last
was
year
a,
in 2020,
have to say that was a very big success for that year, right? It's actually in the court ruling in favor of the same-sex couple. And seems like, oh, by the way, I heard that you mentioned two things, that the Jimmy's request has two parts. One part is like a protection for for Hong Kongers to have same-sex marriage. The other part is to whether government recognize the other country's marriage. What's
yeah.
what's the status of the sec? We know the first requests are not finished yet. What about the status of a second request?
Well, basically, the second request is because, again, there is no right to same-sex marriage. So it follows that overseas same-sex marriages will not automatically be recognized. However, what the court said was the government has to recognize same-sex relationships via an alternative framework. So the logic being is, ideally the government would set up a policy to recognize these relationships, whether
Got
these
it, got it,
relationships
got it.
do they
But
happen locally or overseas? Yeah.
yeah. So it's
But
not able, if the marriage is in other countries, you won't have the protection when you live in Hong Kong. But for during the immigrant process, I think the Hong Kong already start recognize some of the like international marriages, right?
correct. I think it all started in 20, let's say roughly 20, around 2018. So basically, I think just to give everybody a little bit more sort of a historical perspectives, most of the LGBT rights that we are enjoying, we won it through the courts. So over the years, we have seen many judicial review cases. And around 2018, the first one touching on same-sex couples involving spousal visa immigration. So basically, but just to make a long story short, the court eventually ruled that, same-sex relationships for the purpose of applying for a spousal visa would be recognized for such purpose. Previously, obviously, same-sex marriages were not recognized. So same-sex couples, there was no way for same-sex couples to apply for spousal visas. Although we knew for a fact that many same-sex couples, they did bring their spouses over to Hong Kong, but those spouses would be staying in Hong Kong under visitor visa, and that would entail lots of inconveniences. But anyway, because of that court case in 2018, the
Mm,
situation again in 2019, the court made another ruling in favor of taxation. So basically, that
mm,
case was filed by a senior immigration officer. And then, of course, came 2023, this particular ruling. And then eventually, the court also ruled in same-sex couples' favor when it comes to public housing and inheritance. So over the years, we have seen the courts made favorable rulings. But coming back
yeah,
to our issue 2023. So last year, the government finally tabled a bill. Uh, it
yeah. I think,
obviously it wasn't about same-sex marriage, just to
mm,
make it clear.
mm.
Basically, it was a very minimalist framework. Basically, under the bill, the government there would be a new registration system for same-sex couples. And through this registration, there will be certain rights. Most of the rights would be concerning about making medical decisions and after
Oh,
death arrangements. And of course, plus those rights that have been won through the courts. But unfortunately, that bill did not pass the Legislative Council. So
okay.
basically, we are back to square one.
Okay. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of information. Let me try to summarize. For me as a international LGBT, I think first we need to know that at this moment, Hong Kong's protection for same-sex couple is not zero. There's already more than one rulings in favor for same-sex couple. One is immigrants, the other is tax. So that's still like I think that's very progressive compared with places like mainland or Singapore. So yeah, so it's things are progressing, but not always in a linear way. So like what Jerome shared with us in the very beginning, it's a very long journey. Okay. Second part, Jerome already mentioned the latest bill, which is very interesting to learn that although people consider that it's a follow-up of the 2023's court decision, but it's not really a same-sex partnership or marriage proposal. It's a very bare minimum. But if it's bare minimum, Jerome, how come it still failed? Could you share us more about the reason for the failure?
That's a very good question. Yes, it was a very bare minimum. As I said, it wasn't same-sex marriage, and it wasn't even a civil union or civil partnership. It was a very minimum framework. Why it got shot down? I think in Hong Kong we have to remember that we always have very conservative people in our society. I call it a conservative force. Who are these people? Some of them are very traditionalists. Basically, they don't believe in sort of progressive values. But more importantly, this is one group that sometimes people don't realize. These people are Christians. So logically, people ask, well, I mean, why? Because Hong Kong obviously is not a Christian society. But I think we got to remember about Hong Kong's colonial past. When the British came to Hong Kong many, many years ago, uh, they brought with themselves, first of all, they introduced Christianity. There's no secret about that. And secondly, is that they also introduced, I call it Victorian morality. Of course, Victorian moral values at that time, which in essence, moral values predominant in the UK in the 19th or late 19th century, kind of those moral values. So basically, they criminalized male homosexual behavior, not only in Hong Kong, by the way, but they also did the same in places like India, Singapore, and Malaysia. What's the common thread? These places were at one point British colonies. So basically, this is not a common thread. So then why Christianity? I think one has to remember in Hong Kong, Christian churches played a very important role in the provision of social services. So because basically, uh, you look at the history of Hong Kong, the colonial governments, basically they took a hands-off approach when it comes to the provision of social services. So that's why, we see lots of, for example, many schools are
Yeah.
operated by church sponsoring bodies. What we have been seeing is basically, I call it basically an ecosystem because for a very long time, people do see going to a church is a good way for social mobility.
Mm.
At the same time, also, I would say to a certain extent, it was seen as modernity because of Western values,
Yeah.
because that would be in contrast to some traditional Chinese values. So that that sort of ecosystem has been a very important part in Hong Kong society because with their churches, they can mobilize their followers very easily. So this is what we saw last year. So the government introduced this bill in July, which
Hmm.
and basically we did not have a lot of time to respond. Although, in all fairness, I think it was in mid or late June we started picking up intelligence suggesting a bill will be forthcoming. But at that time, we had no idea. Of course, we did not. I think to be fair, no one in Hong Kong was expecting the government would all of a sudden legalize same-sex marriage. We knew it would not be same-sex marriage. But at the end, I mean, in the end, what we did not expect was such a bare minimum. We thought
Mm.
it would be something more proper.
Maybe that's another reason that LGBTQ community are not really care about this bill, and also even the vibe of like the morale is low to fight for the bill to be passed inside the community as well. Am I right?
I think the sentiment was uh, I think most people or a majority in the community uh, realized that it would be a long fight. But
Mm,
what the hope was, at least this would be something that would, well, like a stepping stone.
mm,
Something would happen, and then we'll take it to the next step. And I think it was difficult to fight because, first of all, we just didn't have time. Because last year, because of the legislative calendar, there were not many days for the legislature to debate the bill
mm,
because the legislative calendar would come to an end in October, and the bill was introduced in July, right in the middle, just before summer recess, basically. So basically, we didn't. So time was a problem. There wasn't enough time to do proper consultation and to mobilize. And secondly, the whole process we felt was rushed. And I
mm,
think more importantly, um, it just simply we just could not match the kind of mobilization that we saw from the other side because they were far more organized. Because of course, people go to church every
mm,
Sunday, and
mm,
it's very
mm, mm,
easy for them to
mm, mm, mm,
mobilize their supporters. But anyhow, that was the sort of reason, one of the key reasons why the bill got shut down. Because in Hong Kong, as I said, we have a very strong conservative voice or force. Many of these people they are influential because of their social standing or because of who they are. And in the end, the bill got shot down. But I think it wasn't really like the end of the day, so to speak, because as I said, the bill was very minimalist, and we as in the community already enjoy some rights, as I said, when it comes to immigration, taxation, housing, and inheritance, and these rights won't be affected by the bill anyhow.
mm,
So it would be better to have a bill because at least that would that's a small step forward. But even without a bill, it's not the end of the day. It just means that we're back to the drawing board. We just need to uh, find another way to continue to, I say, engage with people and hopefully help them to understand why this matters to everyone in Hong Kong. because what we are saying is this matters to Hong Kong, all in Hong Kong, because first of all, it's good for economic development, and secondly, it's pro-family because
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
we care about families, and and we believe strongly that recognizing same-sex relationships, it's good for families.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. Oh, okay. You share with us that it's a social conservative group, which is mainly the Christian group, is the main force against the same-sex marriage, and also because of the kind of the bad timing and the constraint of the time that the LGBT community did not respond fully to the bill. Um, Actually, a lot of folks think that CCP or more like after Hong Kong's like political movements failed in 2019, then the themes like the CCP has a bigger influence, Beijing has a big influence to Hong Kong's politics, even the internal like yeah internal politics as well. What do you think about the Beijing's influence on the on this bill? Do they also a main reason, or actually still you think the religious group are the main reason?
I answer your question in from with sort of two perspectives or
Hmm.
two angles. I think generally speaking, Beijing will always be a factor in local politics. There's
Yes.
no escape from it simply because obviously, even though yes, one country, two systems, but nevertheless, the central government always will have a bit of an influence in one way or the other. So that's the general sort of political environment. But I think for on this particular issue, from what I've heard from the P and from information I gather from my conversations with many people, uh, I see no evidence that Beijing was actively influencing how this matter should be handled.
This is very
I
interesting.
think
Okay.
I
Actually, that's a
think
good news.
the the information that I have again suggests that this was purely a local matter. It should be handled locally. Now, of
Interesting.
course, there were people, and there are still people telling us that, oh, this does not align with, for example, with certain values, and they will
Mm-hmm.
also claim as they think this is what Beijing wants. But what I've framed this as, they are more like guessing what Beijing wants. I think uh, to the best that to my understanding, as I said, this is strictly a local matter. Although, the Beijing factor will never go away, but I would
Yeah.
say, you know, this is a local matter that can be handled locally,
Yeah. Or at
and
least we need to first go past the local hurdle, and then
yeah,
maybe Beijing. We may know what Beijing's like standing point
yeah.
at that moment. So one
I
one hurdle after another at least.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to I would say keep this in mind. After the defeat of the bill, actually, there was a commentary from a pro-Beijing newspaper, but basically, let's just call it that particular commentary
Mhm,
very much represents I would say, the official Beijing views,
mhm,
basically recognizing the process that this was strictly done according to local procedures,
mhm,
and also noting that the issue was a bit I would say controversial to a certain extent, yes. So, but it did not indicate which way it should go. Although they
mhm.
did say, the I think the core message in that commentary is, again, in a sort of very useful fashion, just be aware of certain forces will take
Yeah,
advantage of this issue to sort of stir up trouble.
got
So
it.
my own reading is Beijing basically leave it up to the local government to do its work as it should be. And of course, as I said, the Beijing factor will always be here. It is something that we need to know,
Mm-hmm.
but it does not follow that Beijing was sort of directly giving order as to uh, this how the issue should be handled. So I think predominantly the hurdle that we are seeing, the hurdles that we are seeing, they are mostly local. As I said, conservative voices. And yes, I think one could say, for example, if you see what happened in Taiwan, especially in Taiwan, obviously we saw strong mobilization from Christian churches there as well. But again, when it comes to the influence of the church, we are seeing a much stronger influence in Hong Kong, given Hong Kong's colonial history. Um, Again, it's no secret. If we take a step back and take a sort of more macro view, church influence, you know, it's not uncommon. For example, be in the UK, in the States, in Canada,
Yeah.
in all those places, when those places, or even in Ireland for that matter, churches always, mobilize their supporters to oppose initiatives pertaining to same-sex relationships or legalizing same-sex marriage. It's no secret, but I think what is unique to Hong Kong is because of Hong Kong's history, for a host of reasons, the voices, they are particularly influential, not only on some people, but also on how government very influential on government officials for maybe two reasons. First of all, many top government officials are Christians themselves. No secret, actually, of all the chief executives that we have had today, a majority of them are devout Catholics. I
Wow,
think,
okay.
So again, the other thing is obviously from these officials' perspective, they don't want to. I think what we have been seeing is a lack of very so proactive interest in advancing LGBT inclusion, because although it's interesting to see that over the years, what we have seen in Hong Kong is people's attitudes towards LGBT. Basically, it's going in the right direction. For example, for same-sex marriage, last time we saw 60% of the population supported same-sex marriage. So what we are seeing is, as a whole society is moving forward, but policies are lagging behind. And again, this is not uncommon, but I think what is more challenging for Hong Kong, it's sometimes if we want to see progress, not only we need work by NGOs or civil society groups, but at the same time we also need leadership from within. We always need to have internal champions. In Hong Kong, we still have some internal champions, but we need more. And we need our government to understand that doing this is actually good for Hong Kong, as I said, for Hong Kong's economic development, for social harmony, for social cohesion. And it's not Western value. I know some people would say, hey, LGBT inclusion or same-sex marriage, those things are Western values. No, I said, no, those are nothing Western values. Again, in Hong Kong history, very uniquely, what we see today are actually they are influences or products of Christian teachings. It has nothing to do with traditional Chinese values because, again, good, interesting information for audience today. It's up until 1971 in Hong Kong, people could get married according to Chinese customary laws, which means that basically Qing dynasty's era's legal codes. That's why we saw some people with more than one wife, because that was allowed until 1971. So
Oh,
again, the whole idea when it comes to the issue of same-sex marriage, saying that, it's against tradition. I said, what traditions are we talking about? Certainly, we all know how traditional Chinese values see marriage. So again, that tells you, lots of people just ignore or don't realize that if we're talking about traditional Chinese values, are we talking about bringing
which cut?
back the old days that a husband could have multiple wives? So again, this is a question they could never get around. So that's why this argument is dead in Hong Kong. So they are now focusing on it's bad for kids or whatever. So
Mm.
again, if you look at their arguments, I would say they have been used by people in North America in
Yeah,
general or
sounds
more
like very
around the
familiar
world.
from the maybe
Very
Trump
familiar,
supporters.
very familiar. Yeah. So as I said, this is an ongoing, I say it's an ongoing journey. I call it. We all know that now that it won't. That obviously it would be lovely if we had it now, but I think it's just a fact that this is a long journey, and now that we have come to a point where the government needs to do something. So what I would say is we could potentially see some progress within the next few years. For example, after the bill's defeat, the government did say that they would study as to what else they could do to protect same-sex couples because there's a court order and the government still has an obligation to finish the job. So there's a job unfinished. So we will keep asking and say, hey, what will you do next? So
Okay,
when it
this is
comes to
very important
legislation, it will
news
take
to
time.
everyone.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize that for the government, the job is unfinished. They are obligated to continue fulfill the court order, right? But seems like with the failure we have last year, I guess we probably as LGBTQ community, we need to do a lot to better influence the government. What's a strategy? I think you mentioned some strategy, but I guess the audience really curious that what's the next steps? You and your organization and all the LGBTQ groups, what we gonna do?
I think we will increasingly you'll hearing us talking more about families because I
Mm,
think this is something people need to know because there are practical reasons. First of all, we do have rainbow families in Hong Kong. Some of them are actually raising kids, and they need to be they should be protected.
mm,
It's very very important. And actually, even even same-sex marriages are not recognized. But the fact of the matter is, I know for a fact it's when it comes to adoption,
mm,
um, uh, the ultimately whether one could one whether for example whether a same-sex couples could adopt very much depends on whether the couples they are qualified and whether after a thorough assessment that way whether the application would be deemed in the best interest of the child. So yes, same-sex couples cannot apply for adoption as a couple, but they can apply as individuals.
oh,
So, and then the application will be processed accordingly. And of course, the relationship will be taken into account because obviously you will have to the applicants would have to disclose the information. But at the same time, I know for a fact that there were successful cases. So again, we have rainbow families, and we have kids raised within rainbow families, and they need to be protected. So increasingly, as I said, we'll talk more about families, and
mm,
we talk about more when it comes to economic development because these days it's about attracting talent to work.
mm,
Every country on this planet Earth, it's basically every country. I mean, basically, I mean, what we're seeing is many, many countries are competing for top talent. And over the years, we have seen lots of research indicating that an inclusive environment is good for talent attraction. And for Hong Kong, if we want to compete, we need to attract top talent coming to work here. And having an inclusive environment is very, very important. And we already have an edge, let's say, when we compare to Singapore, because as I said, now that same-sex couples can apply for some spousal visas, which you can't do it in Japan, you can't do it in Singapore, but you can do it in Hong Kong. Already, we have an edge. So if we could go even further, it's even better for us because sooner or later, other Asian countries may be catching up. For example, in Thailand, they are very keen in positioning themselves as the preeminent LGBT friendly country in Asia.
Yep.
So we have seen, uh, obviously, there are lots of reasons why Thailand could make it, but I guess one key considerations that they had was about economic development as well. So the whole rainbow economy, it's something that again the potential is quite huge, and it's not something to be neglected or ignored.
I like it. I like it. So I hear like two parts of the strategy. One is promote family. So that's a part of the promote the value. Also, it's also exist within the community, but it's also kind of overlap with like a mainstream value. The second is economy stories here. That's actually very naturally to our next question is how our overseas Chinese can better contribute to the movements. I feel like one day or one way is just immigrant to Hong Kong and join the movements, right? Anything else that you can think of?
I think there are many ways uh, overseas Chinese could help. I think first of all, talk to your friends, your relatives or families,
Mhm.
explain because sometimes they may know people, they may have friends or relatives living in Hong Kong, and I think it's always good to, I say, as changing hearts and minds. And I think one key way to win this sort of thing is winning hearts and minds. And how to win hearts and minds is not through arguments, it's not through debate, but through small talk, basically
Yeah.
influencing people around you to understand why it is important to support this issue. Because we are talking about a potential multiplier effect. It's very effective sometimes if you can influence people around you, and in return, those people will influence those people around them, then it goes on. And it's very effective. That's first of all. And secondly, it's of all, and obviously it's you know, you can write letters to local newsletter, I mean, local papers. And if next time around, for example, actually last year, during the very short consultation period, uh, I actually picked up a few quite a very good letters written by um, our mainland friends living in Hong Kong, working in Hong Kong, expressing that they hope to see this happening because they came to Hong Kong not only for work but because for a more open environment, and they thought this would be a good way to cement Hong Kong as a welcoming and open place. And I think these kind of voices carry a lot of influence as well. And of course, we always welcome support in whatever ways or shapes or forms people can feel comfortable, be it financial contribution or maybe lateral support. There are many, many ways. And I think it's important, but fundamentally, I think the key is we want to hear more stories, especially if you have friends or relatives living or working in Hong Kong. We want to hear their voices because I think sometimes we don't quite often hear their voices as well. So if we could hear more of their voices, that could be even better. Or even if same-sex couples are already living or working in Hong Kong, I wanted to talk to them as well because I we want to uh, tell more good stories. So for example, on our social media, we've already featured a few videos of local couples, but I think eventually we want to see more diverse voices. So not only local couples, but also, for example, our mainland friends who are working and living in Hong Kong. I think their voices are important as well. So if we hear more voices, then I can present these voices to my contact in the legislature and help them know actually this issue enjoys wide support by a wide range of people. And I think given if we could do that, I think there's a chance that we can see some progress within the next few years. I think there's still people. I think what we are seeing in Hong Kong is, although on the surface, it seems like the issue is very quiet, but I know many groups are working behind the scenes, and sometimes given Hong Kong's current situation, I think it's also good. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to just work behind the scenes and get more, I think, build a stronger support base. And next time around, when the time comes, then hopefully we can make a stronger impact. So as I said, it's not the end of the world. It's a journey. Yes, we hit a hurdle last year, and now we are trying to overcome that hurdle. And let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I really like what you said. You said that winning heart and minds is a key for this journey. It's indeed, I totally agree that it's not just for the Hong Kong movements, it's really for everywhere, especially as a Chinese that um, I think for our traditional Chinese culture, essentially don't have the kind of uh, hates towards LGBTQ in history. And that's actually an advantage compared with the Western journey. That actually a lot of our family, our friends, even the folks that have homophobia folks, in China, or in anywhere Chinese culture well exists, they are mainly just ignorant and show up and telling them who we are and just be there. Actually, that's already, I think, maybe half the way finished. So, yeah, win the heart and minds. I really like what you say, and I like the strategy. You mentioned that I think the both economy story and um, family story makes sense as well. I feel like yeah, you mentioned also there's a lot of organizations working behind the scene. Is that kind of, could you actually share more with us about your organizations? Is your organization more like a frontier or more like a behind the scene, or maybe what's the next couple things your organization is planning to do?
Well, I would say we are sort of right in the middle. I think on one hand, there, we always do things behind the scenes. For example, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, we actually reaching out to several key lawmakers. So we met them, we discussed the matter privately with them, and as part of our outreach, we wrote to the government. I wrote newspaper op-eds, letters to editors. I talked to people in the business world, and so um, it's not always for publicity, but I think it's important to help people to understand. And and of course, last year I appeared on a TV show with another group who was opposed, and we had a good debate.
Mhm.
Sometimes, and the work it is ongoing. Um, I think we do want to do something a bit more publicly, but at the same time, we are of course we will do it in a way that it's sensitive to the local situation. So I mean, we are there. I mean, I think we have already built a profile for our organization, but at the same time, there are things that we'll just keep on doing quietly behind the scenes. And again,
Yeah,
fundamentally, it all depends on what we want to achieve. So it could be behind the scenes, or it could be a bit more
yeah.
public
Makes sense.
facing. Yeah,
That's
and
very
and then if I
inspiring
may,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would say very inspiring and respect all the things your organization has done. Yeah, like you said, that it sounds like so much work, groundwork to show up, to influence, and even to like write those articles. I want to make an announcement that want to share with you. A Chinese Rainbow Network want to make a little donation, not too much, 2,000 Hong Kong dollars, to show the support from our community for all the things your organization has done, and to really show that we can continue support the what Hong Kong people are doing. So thank you for being there. Thank you for all the work. And we really hope that we can continue join the efforts and bring all the overseas Chinese to join and help these movements going forward?
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate. And if before one thing, I just want to address one more point, if I may. I know over the years I've got asked as to, hey, what's the situation in Hong Kong? Given I know LGBT groups in mainland China are facing enormous challenges. But I think one thing people is important for people to bear in mind is uh, we are absolutely fine. LGBT groups are still operating. Uh, uh, One thing is the local government, the Hong Kong government, is still committed to promoting equal opportunities for people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. So
Mm,
it's a policy. It's there. So as long as we operate within the law, then we are okay. Of course, there are certain sensitivities we have to be aware of, but otherwise, uh, LGBT groups in Hong Kong are doing okay. And
mm,
for example, coming up in June, there will be a very big LGBT festivities happening. It's called
mm,
Pink Dot.
mm.
So let's hope that it will go on smoothly. And I think if it goes on smoothly, then I think that's another evidence that you know what, yes, although yes, we, like many other many groups, we are facing some challenges, but at the same time we do have room to operate.
Oh, excited about it. So, oh yeah. If you can join, please do join the Pink Dot. I've heard of that. It seems like it's so many people all wear pink, and that's my favorite color. I love it. Thank you, Jerome. Actually, already time passed so quick. I think
Yeah.
now let's do the Q&A. Already see some good questions there. So, a question from CJ. Is there a risk that LGBTQ plus rights group in Hong Kong will be shut down? As far as I know, most of these organizations in mainland China has been closed. That's indeed a very sad thing for mainland China that so many hardworking LGBTQ group closed, media closed. Some of them not closed, but have to change the names. Yeah, I'm also curious. Is that the same pressure Hong Kong organization facing at all? No?
No, no, no. As I said earlier on, I think our environment is quite different from the mainland. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we have to be aware of certain sensitivities and certain things that we have to be aware of. But as I said, Hong Kong, the environment in Hong Kong is quite different. So we still have a room, and as I said, Pink Dot will happen soon. So yes, I appreciate the concerns, but I think there are some fundamental differences. So what I know, local groups are keenly aware of this, and we are doing our best to making sure that whatever we do is within, of course, within the boundaries of the law, and to preserve the space that we have.
Interesting. Maybe that's echo back to what you mentioned that you didn't feel that there's like a Beijing influence for the bill last year. This act, so although they operate, yeah, they kind of have a very strong position on the mainland's LGBTQ groups, but indeed they operate differently in Hong Kong. Yeah, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Frankie asked a question. So Frankie's message. Thank you, Jerome. Powerful sharing and what your team you've done. Collecting stories and advocating new narratives such as rainbow families and adoption is very important. However, I still want to ask, on the legal and policy level in Hong Kong, is advocacy still mostly limited to the general public, with little room to push change in the legislative council? You mentioned that the government still has responsibility to act. So is there still any meaningful spaces to apply pressure to the governments? I think that what he means.
Well, thank you for this very good questions. I think he's quite right on the money. I think yes, the government officer still has a responsibility to act. But when it comes to the space to apply pressure, I think this space is it's rather narrow or rather small. I have to be honest. I think I'm not saying no for a reason being it's you one should never guess what will happen in politics. Things can change quickly. I think what we are seeing is it's we definitely need to do more to help our officials to understand why it is in the best interest of Hong Kong society as a whole to act. Because for quite some time, I think again it goes back to our strategy. You know what? When it comes to same-sex marriage equality, sometimes we see it through the lens, the rights lens. Basically, we approach the issue from a rights angle, which is in itself is nothing wrong, but at the same time, that you could easily neglect that actually my argument is marriage equality is an issue that matters to everyone in society. Of course, first and foremost, it pertains to rights and protections of same-sex couples. But more importantly is we have seen lots of research saying that it's good for society when it comes to mental health of same-sex couples, when it comes to providing a stable environment for children growing up in rainbow families. So these things they do, the stakes are much higher than that is much higher and and these stakes have a much broader implication. So I think it is important to amplify that angle to help people to understand that this is an issue that matters to everyone. If people have a good understanding of that angle, then I think there's a room to influence how lawmakers would see the issue. Because sometimes what I believe in, yes, although we do have some strong opposition, but at the same time, we are also having a large chunk of lawmakers are just voting in a way that they perceive as the safe way to vote on this particular issue. If they see this is a safe way and good way to vote, then we will see that there's a possibility that we could see some real change. But of course, it's a progress, it's a process, and this is something that we are keen to do more within the next few years.
Thank you. And Johnny has a question. Hey, Jerome. So in Hong Kong context, should same-sex marriage be understood primarily as a matter of civil rights or as an issue to be addressed through equal opportunities and anti-discrimination mechanism? I'm wondering how the government prioritizes this issue.
The government is obviously taking a very conservative approach. But I think to answer the question, first of all, I think within the legal context, of course, the matter, again, back to the court case, Jimmy's case, it was fought under the civil rights context. Basically, you know, whether under Hong Kong's basic law and the Bill of Rights, there's a right to same-sex marriage. Of course, that was fought under the context of civil rights. But when it has moved from legal context to the policy side, for the policy side, basically the government obviously is taking the view that obviously it has a responsibility to follow the court ruling. But at the same time, in terms of priority, I don't think it's very high on the list. And the government is obviously taking its time, but surely it will come to a point, it will come to a time that the government has to respond because last year the government again, it was September, if I remember correctly. Yes, the government said that it would study as to what measures it could take to protect same-sex couples. So some of the low-hanging fruit that we are asking is the government could implement some policies to give more protections to same-sex couples. This is the low-hanging fruit. Then after this is done, then we'll talk about let's restart the legislative process. Let's come up with a bill that is better, that would give real protections to same-sex couples, and let's do a real a proper consultation. Let's take the time we need to do it rather than just rushing through the process. So what we are looking at is a time frame of at least 3 or 4 years time frame. But I think it is achievable in the sense that late last year, we actually, there was a research paper that came out. It's about the economic case for LGBT inclusion in Hong Kong. So it mentions about the kind of economic values we could see if we implement LGBT-friendly policies in Hong Kong. So again, my questions to policymakers, it's if we want to see further economic growth in Hong Kong, then how would you address this gap? Because we are not talking about rights, we are talking about money, as Hong Kong is an international financial hub. So sometimes I think sometimes we frame it in a way that we speak their language and use the
Yes.
language to help them to understand.
Yes.
So that's
Very Hong
why
Kong style.
that's another way we help. It is a way that we engage our some of our friends in the legislature and government officials. So we shall see, and hopefully, as I said, is it also interesting that I also believe if we see more progress across Asia, that would also put pressure on the government.
That's right.
So that's why I
Peer
am
pressure.
working closely, peer pressure. I'm working quite closely with my peers from across the region. Hopefully, we'll see more progress in Asia. I think that's fundamentally very, very important.
Oh, that's an interesting topic
yeah,
next time that we want to
yeah,
learn more future,
yeah,
like
yeah,
other countries' work as well.
yeah.
Wow, okay. Time is up, and such an informative and powerful learning for everyone, I believe. Thank you again, Jerome. We want to show our biggest respect and appreciation to all the hard work you and all your folks are doing now. And let's keep connect, and we all want to contribute. Maybe in the future, next time we see you, we'll have some good news. But meanwhile, everyone, please keep in mind what Jerome mentioned in the beginning. It's a long journey, so let's hold our hands together. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you, Jerome.